trying to teach from a state of isolation. If it's not good, just use your imagination. Remember, rapping's not my occupation. Mr. Captain giving you an education. Yeah? Right? Right? I think so. Today we're going to talk about how imperialism played a part in Canada's history. And we're going to answer this doozy of a to what extent question. To what extent was imperialism a beneficial force? Alright, let's talk about imperialism as a part of Canada's history, past, and future. Based on what you've seen about European expansion into India and Africa, you're probably prepared for the worst, but let's start at the beginning. First of all, Europeans weren't the first people to walk this beautiful continent. First Nations people have been here for a heck of a lot longer and were host to a number of visitors before the French and British even arrived. I just want to make sure we get that when we talk about the origins of Canada, we aren't necessarily talking about the origins of this place. Alright, so now that we are on the same page, let's talk about the creation of a country. France was the first European country to set up shop here with a new colony that traded mostly in furs. The French worked closely with First Nations, such as the Wyandot and the Haudenosaunee, in order to conduct their fur trade business. The French colonists needed the First Nations as trappers and guides, so they had a fairly cooperative relationship. The French colonists were known as Acadians or the Canadians of New France. You may have heard of the economic philosophy known as capitalism. This was a big motivator during the age of imperialism, and it definitely spurred on competition. Cue the British. They also had their sights set on Canada and set up shop by sailing into the Hudson Bay, and started a fur trade of their own. The British also created the 13 colonies on the east coast of what is now known as the United States. So we already know that during this age of imperialism, European countries were known to get their hands dirty and to fight amongst themselves. In this pre-Canada Canada, British and French imperial powers fought the 7 Years' War over who would reign supreme. Believe it or not, it lasted 7 years. At the end of the 7 Years' War, the Treaty of Paris, signed in Paris, believe it or not, made New France an official colony of Britain. A bit later, the Proclamation of 1763 took rights away from the French Canadians and laid out a plan to assimilate them. Tisk, tisk, tisk. The colonies in America went to war over their independence. And obviously, the British colonies just north of the border were a little nervous, especially after treating their French partners so poorly, so they came up with a plan to keep them loyal and to fight off the Americans. In 1774, they passed the Quebec Act, which guaranteed rights in the areas of language, religion, and civil law. As you're probably learning during this current pandemic, it can be difficult to live with other humans. This was definitely the case for the Anglophones and Francophones of early Canada. At Confederation, which is when the British colonies of North America came together, creating an official Canada, the founders agreed to create a country based on bilingualism. Either language could be used in government, laws, record keeping, hockey night in Canada broadcasting, the essentials. The situation wasn't perfect though, and for many decades, Francophones did not enjoy an influence equal to their English-speaking counterparts. In some provinces, language rights were even taken away. The imperialistic attitude was alive and well with the British, and they continued to extend their privilege as far as they could, as long as they could get away with it. The legacy of British imperialism meant that Francophones, as well as First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and later non-British immigrants, experienced the oppression of a government and society that believed the British ways were superior to theirs. To look on the bright side, as I like to do on occasion, this struggle for rights eventually made Canada a more accepting country and society. Many Canadians have learned to value and respect the diversity of ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and religious backgrounds of those we live with. These attitudes have made Canada a more pluralistic society and has led to the collective identity we share today. Isn't that nice? A culture grounded on respect for all peoples. Let's end this lesson on a high note. It definitely won't last long, because our next topic is the impact of Confederation on First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Canada. Mr. Captain giving you an education.
Yeah, right?